This morning, the Laurel Police Department announced a major break in a case that we told you about several weeks ago. It involves several teenagers who investigators say are responsible for breaking into cars and leaving a lot of them like that, busted out windows, garbage bags covering them, glass all over the roadways. News 4's Joseph Olmo has more on the case and why the police chief is calling for more accountability.
Today, harsh words from a Maryland police chief who says kids who commit crimes, including this very suspect, are being released without consequences. It's a concern that 7 News has been covering for years now.
Normally on this channel, when we talk about the state of Maryland, usually the story is in connection to the city of Baltimore. And obviously, Baltimore is a high crime area. It's one of the top homicide cities in the United States of America each and every year. It is rife with Democratic Party corruption at every single level. We've done education stories out of that particular area. But make no mistake about it, what is going on with youthful offenders, teens, if you will, is a statewide problem. And the reason why it's a statewide problem is because the state of Maryland ended up passing one of these laws that's akin to bail reform, but just for juvenile offenders. And a perfect example of this law completely failing is what went down where they ended up arresting a 16-year-old in connection with 121 car break-ins in a single night, only to release him 5 hours later, only to suddenly discover that there were more car break-ins shortly after his release. And this is a problem that we see time and time again. And the reason for it is because essentially Maryland state law says that if you're 1 day under the age of 18, you're basically an innocent Baba Angel Aladdin who can't do anything wrong. And this lack of consequences is leading to these kind of crime sprees. And there is nothing the police can do about it, despite the fact that you have over 30 departments writing a letter to the Maryland state government, to the Department of Juvenile Services, begging them to change their policies, begging them to fix this, because again, this is so destructive, it's so devastating for the victims of this crime, but there are no consequences, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
We're looking at video right now of what happened on the night of May 4th, car after car after car. It's 121 in total. What was it, like 40 or 50 just in the city of Laurel alone?
We had 54 here in Laurel. The rest were, as you mentioned earlier, Howard County, joining Prince George's County, and Anne Arundel County.
And what were these kids doing?
They were just simply going through neighborhoods and targets of opportunity, breaking into cars. If there's something in there, they would steal it. If there's nothing in there, they'd move to another car. As you've seen the video, they move pretty quickly. What our experience is, the vehicle that's being driven by one of the suspects is normally a stolen vehicle. The people that are breaking into the cars, they aren't venturing too far from the vehicle, and our understanding is they do that because if the police arrive or some other interruption occurs, they can quickly get back into the car and get out of the area.
So in this particular clip, you hear the chief of the Laurel Police Department explaining exactly how this crime goes down, exactly what is caught in video in his particular county over 50 times. And I just want to point out, in terms of damage for this crime, that of course the state of Maryland says is not that serious. It's just a property crime. It's no big deal. We're looking at nearly $36,000. And by the way, that is a conservative estimate. What I'm doing is looking at the 121 cars that were broken into. By the way, I'm not even factoring in the stolen vehicle that was probably broken into at the start of this crime spree. And I'm multiplying that by $300, which is a standard rate, honestly, a lowball estimate depending on where you're at, for replacing a car window, and that gives you a total of $36,000 worth of damage just in the break-ins to the windows of the vehicles, of which, by the way, property was stolen from multiple different people. Again, 121 car break-ins in a single night, $36,000 worth of damage, but for whatever reason, the Department of Juvenile Services says those are innocent Baba Angel Aladdins. We can't reveal any information about them. We can't even name and shame them. And by the way, this calculation doesn't even count the 17 additional vehicles that were broken into shortly after this 16-year-old suspect's release. And again, you have surveillance video, you have multiple layers of evidence in order to indicate that this person was in fact involved. You have the 2 other co-conspirators that this police chief says that they're going to arrest later on.
And updated us 121 vehicle break-ins, 3 teenagers. You were able to arrest one and charge one just last week. What's the deal with the 2 other teenagers, Chief?
So, due to the continuing investigation, our detectives identified 2 other young people that were involved, and we anticipate them to be in custody later today.
They happen to be juveniles as well, but Maryland's system, their Department of Juvenile Services, does not take this seriously. So all the different people who have to suffer the consequences of these break-ins, of paying it out of pocket or going through insurance and dealing with higher insurance premiums, they have no recourse. The system is not on their side because it's on the side of the criminal.
Chief, you got kind of fired up at the podium. On behalf of the victims, you said, a lot of people will look at vandalism or car break-ins and say this is a low-level crime, but for people who need to get to work, people who need to get to appointments or bring their kids to practice, this is their life. You had a message about accountability in this press conference. What do you want people to know about that?
Well, as you mentioned, we hear from our community. We listen to the community. We had 54 families just here in Laurel who lost their car for a period of time. That's also a loss of money on their deductible that the family many times can't afford. And we have community meetings. We hear about this repeatedly. And people are upset there's no accountability. The people that were responsible for doing this should be held accountable to make these families whole on their losses. And also there should be an amount of rehabilitation within the system. This young man was released within 5 hours of us taking him into custody, back into the environment that he came from. That's not an unusual circumstance. And frankly, from what we see is there's little to, if any, accountability down the road from the system, the rest of the system. There needs to be an amount of accountability. That's the only way they're going to learn not to do this. And they need to make sure that the people, our victims, at least in some way, are made whole from their losses.
So the police chief right here, in my opinion, is just saying common sense things, that the people who are victimized deserve some form of justice. And again, we see B-roll of car after car after car with trash bags over their window. And I just want to point out that even though I was calculating this as if one window was broken per vehicle, as many of you can see for yourselves, some of these vehicles in the B-roll have 2 different windows broken. And again, he talks about the insurance premiums. He talks about how people can't afford this, but there is no mechanism for justice. There's no mechanism for restitution, and these break-ins ended up continuing immediately upon this person's release. And honestly, why wouldn't it continue? If you're this criminal and you could steal all of this property, do all of this damage without any consequences, they won't even ID you publicly. They won't name and shame you. What deterrent effect do you have from just being arrested for a couple of hours? What's the point of these 3 police departments coordinating together, putting this investigation together, getting charges against you if you're just going to be released by the Department of Juvenile Services? If you're just going to get offered a sweetheart plea deal that is not going to have any consequences for you. Now, again, I want to move on to some of the reactions from some of the people that were actually impacted by this. So we got to jump to a different local news segment for you to see that, because make no mistake about it, all of these policies are put into place in order to protect young black men, black youths, but in reality, oftentimes, the people who are victimized by these very criminals are the law-abiding black people in the same communities. Again, the people that supposedly we're trying to save by passing all this soft on crime nonsense are the ones taking the hits time after time after time.
It was like this all across Laurel. More than 120 victims waking up May 4th to find their car windows smashed.
My wallet, everything is gone. They took money out my wallet.
The thieves caught on camera breaking glass, stealing what they could in Laurel, Howard, Anne Arundel, and Prince George's, hitting, and that number is worth repeating, 121 cars in one night. It took police a couple weeks, but last Friday, Laurel Police Chief Russ Hamill says his detectives found the leader of the group of thieves, the guy driving the stolen car, in those security videos.
So again, here you have a young man talking about how he lost his wallet and everything of value that was in his vehicle, and of course, his vehicle is significantly damaged. And by the way, we can see from this local news report, which also takes place in Laurel, a whole other set of cars that have their windows smashed, that have trash bags put in their place for the windows, because this crime just keeps happening. It keeps impacting these people. It keeps hurting them. It keeps devastating them. And this is just something that these people have to deal with. This law-abiding person who is not involved at all whatsoever, in his name, they ended up passing this stupid-ass juvenile services law. And guess what? He's the one who suffers the consequences of this. Everybody in this neighborhood, they went down the street right here, ends up suffering because we have a system designed to protect the criminal rather than the law-abiding person.
We arrested a young man, 16 years of age, and managed to link him to all 121 events throughout the region. A search warrant was served at his home, resulting in the recovery of numerous credit cards, over 20 sets of vehicle keys, and other evidence linking him to these crimes.
But then, because of his age, the suspect was taken before the Department of Juvenile Services intake unit, where police were told to release him immediately. Hamill today speaking out about Maryland's catch and release juvenile policies.
I have little hope there will be further accountability for him due to this broken system. They consider this a lower level crime. I urge them to come to my community meetings and hear how lower level it is. I got one next week.
So we have the same police chief right here talking about how the person that they arrested initially was the driver and the ringleader of these particular crimes. And of course, the local news affiliate has to obscure his identity due to privacy laws, due to all these different various protections for these youthful offenders. And again, the fact that you can't name and shame these people is one of the reasons why they keep getting away with it. Now, I also want to point out that a 2-week investigation where you devote detectives in order to canvass the scenes, interview witnesses, go over surveillance video doesn't cost nothing. It costs the taxpayer a significant amount of money. And the thing is, most of us would say that that money is in fact worth it. However, it only is worth it when you end up catching the person, when you end up arresting them, and when they actually have to pay for their crime. But in this particular case, they devoted 2 weeks of effort, 2 weeks of detective time, reviewed a bunch of different surveillance video for what? For the person to be released the very same day, and of course, for the crimes to start up that very same evening. Again, right after his release, they had a very similar set of crimes, more surveillance video. It looks like the same person. We haven't seen arrests that indicate that. Nobody's 100% confirmed that, but make no mistake about it, the incentive for the criminal, if you're just going to get released, if you're not going to suffer the consequences, is going to be for you to do it again. Now, of course, people are going to say, Sean, innocent until proven guilty, innocent Baba Angel Aladdin, but in reality, the evidence against this individual is overwhelming. Let me get into that for you guys right now. Now, according to the New York Post, this investigation ended up leading the police to the teenage suspect's home, where they found nearly 20 car keys, credit cards, and other stolen items, and managed to link him to all 121 break-ins, according to Hamill, who spoke at the news conference. Again, that is the police chief. Quote, I would like to tell you that's the end of the story there, but that's not the end of the story, Hamill added. After the boy was taken into custody, Laurel Police and the Maryland State's Attorney's Office requested that the boy remain in juvenile detention due to the scale of his alleged crimes. But the police were rebuffed due to the boy's lack of criminal history and, of course, the state characterizing this as a low-level crime, so he was ordered to be sent home. Again, the police were ordered instantly to release him by the Department of Juvenile Services because they classified these as little baby crimes, even though we talked about how the conservative estimate for this is $36,000 in damage. And of course, they said, oh, he had no prior criminal history, no real record of these kind of crimes. And it's absolutely crazy that you could be arrested in connection for 121 break-ins. And they say, oh, well, you're not showing a pattern of behavior. Guess what? 121 break-ins is in fact a pattern. The fact that nobody arrested him for previous car burglaries before is not really relevant to the situation when you have this many offenses, in my opinion. But this is the state of Maryland right here. They ended up letting this guy go. He ends up breaking into more cars, probably. We don't have proof of that. But I'm sure 2 weeks later, when they arrest him in connection with all of those crimes and he gets ordered released again, they'll say innocent Baba Angel Aladdin didn't do nothing wrong. And again, you have no recourse if you're a private citizen in the state of Maryland against these juvenile offenders. Now, of course, I want to know what you guys think about all of this down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Maryland's absolutely insane policies leading to the release of a 100-time burglar in one evening. Till next time.